a bad part of town, the police were called in to investigate a mysterious death. A man was found dead in an elevator. He was slumped up against the wall, and there were 2 holes in his neck. His skin was pale white, and all the blood had been drained from his body. The most puzzling thing about it was that there were no bloodstains in the elevator, and no fingerprints, and no signs of a forced entry. Things took another bizarre turn 1 month later, when a 13-year-old girl was found dead in that same elevator with 2 identical puncture wounds in her throat. Her body had also been sucked dry of its blood. Rumors began to spread around the area that there was a vampire on the loose. The people who lived in the building were in a panic and refused to use the elevator. The police were under pressure to get to the bottom of the mysterious deaths, so they staked out the apartment. A detective and a sergeant were posted inside the elevator, riding it up and down for days. On the 3rd day, the elevator suddenly shuddered to a halt, and the lights went out. The 2 men were plunged into darkness. They pulled out their flashlights and contacted their colleagues by radio to let them know that they were trapped. There was a long silence. Then, they heard a strange click, click sound. It seemed to be coming from the roof of the elevator. Their hearts began beating fast as they realized something was crawling up there. Something big. That's when they noticed a hole in the roof where a panel had fallen away. The detective aimed his flashlight at the gap and had to fight back sheer terror when he saw something peering through it. It was a small, hairy head the size of a fist, with 8 black, shining eyes. The sergeant was claustrophobic and also had a deadly fear of spiders. He flew into a panic and dropped his flashlight. Suddenly, the enormous spider sprang into the elevator and landed on the sergeant's face. It sank its jaws into his cheek and started sucking out his blood. The sergeant was screaming, and for a moment, the detective was paralyzed. Then, he took out his gun and aimed and fired. The first shot blew off one of the spider's hairy legs. The sergeant stopped screaming, and his body collapsed to the floor. The wounded creature raced up the wall, and the detective could feel its bristly hairs as it rushed past him and escaped out the hatch. When their colleagues managed to open the doors of the elevator, they found a nightmarish scene. The sergeant's corpse laid slump against the wall, and the traumatized detective was curled up in the corner. The army was called in, and they destroyed the spider with a flamethrower. But then, they discovered that it had laid eggs at the top of the elevator shaft. Russian authorities moved quickly to hush up the incident, but news leaked out in a Turkish newspaper, which claimed the giant spider was mutated by the radioactive fallout from the Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster The Russians denied this and claimed the story was an exaggeration. Is this story true? There's no way to tell for sure, but it's something to think about if you're ever stuck in an elevator. I recently moved into a new house. It had that old, yet new type of look to it. And to be honest, I hated it at first glance. It was just weird, and it was always cold inside. Even though I normally enjoy the chilly weather, the heater could never seem to work. I brushed it off because I was already miserable, and it just seemed like a nuisance to start complaining now. So the days went by. I had now lived in the new house for over a week. I went to school, I talked to people, and everything seemed like it was going to be decent. Until I went to my bedroom that one night and made the mistake of going to draw my blinds. I grabbed the curtains and shut them when I caught a flicker of movement near the garden. Peering closer, I thought I saw a very tall man. At first, I thought it was probably my dad, seeing as he always comes home late. But as this man walked forward towards the house, I almost had to keep from vomiting. The man's face was so mutilated and bloody, it looked as though somebody took an axe and started hacking. I kid you not, the guy was around as high as the window, and he appeared to be looking for something. I didn't think this man was supposed to be here, so I went into my older sister's bedroom and shook her awake. I told her about the man outside, but she shrugged me off and told me to go away. She knows I have insomnia, so telling me to go to sleep is like telling me to try to be social. Impossible. I left and peered outside the window again, only to come face to face with the man. I almost shrieked, being so close with only the glass separating us. The man looked at me with a look of rage on his face and started pounding on the window, shouting and getting blood on the glass. This time, I did scream, and my sister and her husband came barreling in, asking what was going on. I pointed to the window and saw my brother-in-law turn pale. With a look of rage and fear, my brother-in-law ran out of the house and tried to catch the man behind the window. Unfortunately, the ugly-looking man escaped. We called the police, but they found no trace of where the man could have gone or why he had showed up at my house. It was a dead-end case. Needless to say, I didn't feel safe at all in the house. So I called up my friend, and the next morning asked her if I could stay with her until the situation settled down. I am still currently at her house, waiting to see if the police can find anything. Because honestly, that man had a lot of strength. I was just glad the window glass was thick, and my sister came in time. Because if my brother-in-law had not been there, who knows what could have happened. Thank you for listening, everyone. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below about your favorite story. Also, that noise you hear outside your window, it's probably nothing, so don't worry about it. And remember, stay haunted, my friends. I'll see you next time.